LaPine Board of Directors to order. I would like to again introduce our participants this evening. To my immediate left, Director Amy Tatum, Cameron Fisher, and Shirley Olson, and Keena Chadwick. To my immediate right is Dr. Cook, our superintendent, our deputy superintendent, Dr. Lisa Burke, and board clerk Janet Bojanowski, and I am Marcus LeGrand, chair of the board. In order to ensure safety and ability for the board to focus on its business, we ask that all in attendance adhere to the board meeting attendance expectations. And to our candidates, welcome as well. All right. So I have a little bit to read, so just bear with me for a second, all right? This evening, we will be interviewing 3 finalists for the vacant Zone 6 seat on the Board of Directors. Joining us this evening is Brandon Berlin, Jen Lynch, and Ross Tolan, who is joining us virtually. Each finalist will have 3 minutes to provide an opening statement, 2 minutes to answer a series of 8 questions. You don't have to 2 minutes, you have to answer all the 8 questions in 2 minutes, but 2 minutes for each question. Then 3 minutes to provide a closing statement and ask any question you may have. We will use a timer on the large screen you see above, ensure that we are adhering to all of our time limits. Board members will take turns asking questions, altering between which finalists will answer each question first. Board members would then individually vote by ballot for their top selection. The ballots will be tallied by the deputy superintendent and board clerk Bojanowski, and the results will be shared with the board members to review prior to the motion on the filling the vacancy. At this time, we will start with opening statements from Brandon Berlin. Ms. Berlin?
Green. Okay. Good evening, board members, and thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. I am here because I deeply believe in Ben LaPine's promise and goals. I am here because I have benefited greatly from a darn fine public education as a high schooler, in my undergraduate and in my graduate education. And I've been in this system since 1997 as a classroom teacher in public, private, and charter schools. Additionally, my work as a resilience and mind-body specialist has given me a unique understanding of how emotional and psychological wellness impacts learning and achievement, not only for students, but for everyone in the school community. I'm here because I know the hard work and the bring you to your knees heartbreak and the bring you to your knees joy that comes with being an educator. In 2003, I was at Sunriver Prep when it closed, leaving our tight-knit junior class of 15 scattered for their senior year. I've known exuberance as a founding teacher at both Cascades Academy and Redmond's IB program, the International School of the Cascades, where I served 5 precious years before the board decided to discontinue it. These weren't just schools that closed, they were families separated and supportive communities lost. I understand the profound relationships that form between students, teachers, admin, and families, and I felt the impact that board decisions can have on educational communities. These experiences taught me the importance of teaching and practicing resilient skills in the classroom. By 2006, I began integrating mindfulness into my curriculum to address my students' declining mental wellness and their lack of ability to focus. I've made it a priority to teach critical thinking skills, especially including evaluating information sources. Upperclassmen reported feeling equipped to confidently filter through the BS and face the world that they needed to face. Now, with mis and disinformation everywhere, citizen students need strong critical thinking skills more than ever, and educators need board support and oftentimes protection so that they can teach them those skills. I appreciate that Ben LaPine acknowledges that its goals extend beyond academics, as evidenced in goal number 3, ensuring that students, families, and staff experience wellness, inclusion, and belonging as key elements of school culture. But wellness isn't just another goal. I'd argue that it's the catalyst for achieving all of our other goals. Without emotional and psychological wellness, students struggle to learn and teachers struggle to teach. And I think I'll just end it there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Brandy. And now we hear from Jen Lynch, opening statement. Ms. Lynch?
Hey, good evening, board and members of the administration. My name is Jen Lynch, and I'm honored to be a candidate for Zone 6. I applied for this role because I want the district's academic performance and student outcomes to improve. And service on this board is a tremendous opportunity to drive that improvement. I've lived in Oregon for 20 years and from Bend for the last 4. And if I had to name one reason why my family relocated from Portland to Bend, it would be for these schools. My 3 teenagers are now in 8th and 10th grade and thriving here. I'm a product of public school. My husband and I are both Iowa City High class of '96. I studied to be a newspaper reporter at Northwestern University and pivoted quickly to web development when I figured out how much reporters made, and then got my MBA at Columbia, New York. My husband moved his software company to Portland in 2004, and I worked first for a series of software companies and then became an investor in software companies, a role I've held for the last decade. I tell people my job as a managing partner at Portland Seed Fund is just like Shark Tank, except with a lot less niche peanut butter. I've been giving back to Oregon since the minute we arrived. I spent 8 years on the board of an ERDC daycare center in North Portland and 10 years chairing the board at Oregon's only free school supplies store for teachers. I also have years of experience in political advocacy at the state level, working for innovation-based economic development with Business Oregon, and Common Sense Gun Control is the founder of the Alliance for a Safe Oregon. So why does an investor and a business owner like me care about this school board? Well, we should all care about the school board. And I think part of a measure of a district's success is its relationship and credibility with all of our local communities, and the business community included. And I've always worked hard on that relationship. I job shadowed elementary school principals alongside more than 100 other business leaders with principal for almost a day in Portland. And when I saw Ben Lepine's pleas for help during COVID's nadir, I got my restricted sub-license and pitched in. And all that to say, not only do I care about improving our public schools, I've done the work to be able to support them in this specific way. This spring, I completed a 2-year program at the Harvard Kennedy School to strengthen my technical skills in public administration. And I bring experience that directly applies to the supervision of our superintendent. Most of my 9 years on the board of Oregon Public Broadcasting was spent chairing that board's Human Resources Committee with the direct responsibility of managing the board's review of and compensation of the organization's CEO, as well as an oversight role on the organization's negotiations with its represented employees. I have a strong grasp of a board's role in setting vision and goals, supervising a CEO, and bringing in the voice of constituents. And I badly want Bend Public Schools to succeed because my own public school experience was so formative. And I firmly believe our public schools are worth fighting for. And now, as a parent and community member, I want to join your awesome team of directors, of administrators, in helping Ben Lepine Schools realize the full potential of every kid in the district. It's great to meet all of you in this forum, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Jen. Appreciate it very much. Now we'll hear from Ross for your opening statement.
Thank you, Chair LeGrand, Superintendent Cook, and board members. Thank you for the opportunity to interview for this board position. I am sorry I'm not able to be there in person tonight, and I do appreciate the ability to interview virtually. My wife and I decided to retire here in Central Oregon a little over 4 years ago, landing in Lapine. We had lived in Bend for 20 years ago when I worked at COCC and came to love Central Oregon. I actually only retired from being in community colleges for the past 40 years last February, finishing my career at Tillamook Bay Community College over on the coast. In the short time since I retired, I've taught a class over at COCC. I'm going to teach a couple more this coming year, and I worked with the forestry class at Lapine High School last spring to prepare them for the state forestry competition. The bulk of my career has been in education, which is one of my life's passions. I do want to continue to use my skills and experience in this area to help Ben Lapine to continue advancing high quality, effective education to all the students in the district. Having reviewed the board ends document, I do feel my goals for education align well with your goals, especially in the areas of developing strong academics, helping students to find their life passion, and focusing on encouraging diversity, equity, and inclusion. I also feel my experience has prepared me to be an effective board member for the district. Over the past 7 years, I've been a member of 7 different community and educational boards, including the Northwest Regional ESD Board of Directors, which is the largest ESD in Oregon. I also work closely with my own college board. I do enjoy working with others in a team environment to solve problems and to improve systems. My experience includes extensive work preparing and managing large budgets, developing and following detailed policies, and hiring and evaluating educational executives, all work of a school board. I also work closely with the superintendents of all the school districts within my college district. We met regularly and worked together to provide college opportunities to high school students through dual credit and course articulations, as well as enhance the transition of high school students to college for both transfer and CTE programs. Being retired, I do have time now to fully prepare for each board meeting, engage in board discussions, advocate for the schools, and visit them to meet staff, faculty, and students and learn about the key issues impacting the district. If chosen, I would be an active, engaged board member and would look forward to working with you all. Again, thank you for the opportunity to be considered for this board position.
Thank you, Ross. Appreciate it very much. And thank you. And I'm now going to be going into the questions, and I'm going to ask the first question. And I'm going to start with Jen on this first question. The question you already have in front of you, some of you have already talked a little bit about your board and your committee experience, but the thing I want to do or ask you all is the last part of that question. Where were some of your benefits and challengings in being in some of those committees and on those boards?
Yeah, totally. So yes, I have just a great deal of board experience. I think I've been on at least 10, many of which for 5 years or longer. And I will say that duration and tenure to me has always been an important part of successful and productive board service. I think it takes a while to learn the job and the nuance of it, and it takes a while to make connections with the board's constituents. And all of that stuff just can't be rushed. And so I will say, I think my most successful board experiences have been those ones that have been long, and there have been a number of them. Board challenges always have to do with resources. They always have to do with the allocation of resources. And I'm lucky enough that I've been a part of some very fancy, so OPB is a very fancy board that can afford consultants, organizational consultants, and development consultants who can work with a board to implement frameworks for scarce allocation of resources. I'm really lucky that I've benefited from a number of those different sort of program-focused frameworks, and feel like after 20 years of board service, I'm more prepared to address those resource challenges as a board member than I was when I first got started.
Thank you, Jen. Appreciate it. And Ross?
Well, yes, I've certainly been on lots of boards and committees. I think probably the biggest strength is the fact that you have a group of people with different ideas, different ways of thinking, and the strength of that is that you come up with some great solutions, some ideas that work well. Challenges, of course, is built in with the fact that yes, you do have people with different ideas and ways of looking at things. And so it creates tension, it creates opportunities for arguments and disagreements. But I think that's part of the whole process of working in a committee or board setting. The key is that we are there to achieve the same goals. And so if we keep that in mind and keep working together, then the strengths of having those different ideas and ways of thinking about things really creates some great solutions. And it's been wonderful experiences for me through my career of working with very diverse groups of people to come up with solutions that'll make for a stronger educational environment.
Thank you, Ross. Appreciate it very much. And now, Brandy?
Yeah, thank you. Unlike the other two candidates that are here, and I'm so appreciating hearing all the board experience that you have, I don't have as much board experience. I was a founder of the Namaspa Foundation, which is the small business that I used to own, and we created a foundation, and I was a vice chair of that board where we took yoga and mindfulness out to schools and rehab centers and the local jails, and that would be really the extent of my board experience. And I'm not, and I'm glad to actually answer that question up front to get my limitations as a candidate out there for everyone to see. Knowing this, that still didn't stop me from applying for the job, because I have many times in my life as an educator gone into something where I had no idea what I was doing, and I did it anyway. And I think that's really the model that we want to promote for our students, which is on-the-job training is super valuable, and that we learn from the people that we work with. And yes, it's great to be prepared and to have all this experience coming in, but I don't ever want that to be a reason for people to refrain from throwing their hat in the ring. And so, yeah, as an educator, I served on the class project in Redmond when we were looking at value-added measures. I was on the union bargaining team in, oh Lord, when was that? The year we went to a 4-day school week in Redmond, which was really, really challenging. And I'm really glad that I had those experiences, but frankly, I am a lifelong classroom teacher, and I had to allocate my time in order to be able to best serve my students. And I feel like now, in this position that I'm in, as semi-retired, doing a little bit of everything that I love, now this is my time to step in and learn something new.
Thank you for the honesty. I appreciate it very much. Yep. Director Tatum?
Yeah, no, okay. Brandy's, okay. Brandy, I'm going to have you answer this first. How do your own personal and professional values align with public education?
Yeah, thank you for that question. My personal and professional values. I spent a lot of time over the last several years really zeroing in on what are my core values and making decisions that only align with my core values. And let me tell you, that is a tough exercise to narrow it down to 3. What I came to and that I stand by right now is that my core value of connection and courage are the ones that really drive me. And when I look at what Ben Lapine is doing in public education, when I look at the promises and the goals that you have, and again, I'm going to come back to the wellness piece that I see, goal number 3, which I'm going to say again, I believe is a driver for all the other goals. That tells me that you are able to connect into something that's bigger than just the academic piece, that there's an expansive vision that's there. And that takes a lot of courage, because we all know that schools are consistently asked to do more with less. And yet, we are in a situation where our kids are coming in and they're struggling to learn because of what's going on at home, because of what's happening in the world today. And it takes a lot of courage for a school board to have the kind of vision that's putting those types of situations, those types of programs in place for kids. And so the connection piece, the fact that that this board is able to recognize the power of that and to put things in place like we're seeing at Roslyn Elementary really heartens me. And like the Student Voices Council, that really does as well. So thanks.
Thank you. Ross?
Thank you. Well, my whole career has been working in education. I have a passion for education. I really believe that most of our students learn many of their values in school. It's such an important part of their life for so many years to build their future, what their goals will be, and so my whole career has been spent pretty much working to help students be successful, to be motivated to learn, focus on learning, and trying to get a set of values that will carry them through their entire life. Um, and that has done wonders for me. I feel like what we do in education, preparing the young people, is one of the most important things that happen in our country, and it's what's made our country great, I think, over the years. Um, so those values, I think, are created in schools to a large extent, and we have a lot of responsibility to do good work to make sure they are the right values and will help those students through their entire lives.
Thank you. And Jen?
Sure. So personally, I think there's a moment, um, there was a moment growing up when it occurred to me that kids don't get to choose the circumstances of their birth. I think that kicks in for everybody at sort of a different place. For me, it was probably in high school. And I think that the reason why it kicked in was because high school is when we start acting like a little community of adults. And we sort of start to get a preview of what this is, what all of us are going to look like when we get out into the world. And I think that knowing that, all of the, all of these kids that I went to school with were going to become tomorrow's adults made the care and feeding of kids so much more important to me personally than it probably wouldn't have. And I spent a lot of years assuming I was never going to be a parent. Seemed like way too much work. And yet, got to Portland as a 20-something and went right into this job. On the board of a sliding fee scale daycare center for kids ages 0 to 6 for exactly this reason that, kids get, to give kids a head start, literally and figuratively. And followed it up with a lot of volunteer work over a lot of years. And professionally, I mean, that's kind of why I'm here, is that I know as a business person in this community that the connection that we have with our public schools is absolutely critical. I wish there were more business people like me here physically, either as part of this board or in the audience. And I wish that connection was stronger. And I do think a lot of business people get it. I think they do. But I think that this connection needs to be more explicit.
Director Chadwick? Number 3. You get started.
Ross, we're going to start with you. What particular issue regarding Bend the Pine schools would you like this board to address, and what is your proposed solution?
Well, as I think there is with every school district, there's a whole series of issues that the board has to be involved with. Um, as you'll I'm sure experience here at Bend, graduation rates are an issue, achievement gaps, equitable resource distribution, making sure you have enough money to do to achieve the goals that you've set. Recruiting and retaining high quality staff and faculty is critical. Mental health support. All these are things that are issues with every school district. I do firmly believe in that Carver model that you had us read, that you seem to ascribe to. That the board is there to help set those ends or goals to achieve, and then let the staff do the work and bring the data back to show that these goals are being achieved. So the board is there to help, obviously, through policy development, work on the budget with the superintendent, and to help with those goals. But the staff is the ones that are there. They're the professionals hired to get that work done, and the board is there to support them. And as far as solutions, If I had those, I probably could go out and make a lot of money consulting and sharing those solutions with everybody else.
Thank you. Okay. Jen, would you like me to repeat the question?
Yeah, no, I'm good.
Okay.
Okay, this is where I know I should do my grab bag of like, more trumpet lessons and all the things that I would love us to work on. And I'll tell you in advance, I already wrote, my closing statement is going to be a lot about this, and so I'm going to be a little bit repetitive. But I will say, to the board ends, the one that I didn't talk about in my closing statement is this third goal about students feeling inclusion and wellness and safety at school. And I would like to see, I think, I'm sure you guys as well were heartbroken by the, anytime there is press about students not feeling safe at school. And we've had a few more of those in the last 12 months than any of us would like. And so to that end, like with all of our goals, with all of the board's goals, a more explicit and prescriptive definition of what safety looks like, and a clearer vision for that safety, one that's informed by students and families and by staff, all of whom need to share in that sense of wellness, inclusion, and safety. And I think that, surveys are great. Surveys are great, and continuing to push ourselves on how we recognize and measure that sense of safety in a world that's not always going to sort of set us up for success on that metric.
Thank you. Brandy, would you like me to repeat the question?
Yeah, thank y'all. So the issue that I'd like to bring to your attention now isn't included in my opening or closing statement, so thank you for the question. And it involves, like, what does it really look like on the day-to-day? And my particular emphasis, like my experiences at the high school level. And what does it look like on the day-to-day when there's not equity at the high school level? Give me like a specific example. And one of the things that I've seen is that there's a lack of access to after-school opportunities for kids that have to catch the bus. And so you see kids being dropped off by their parents, and that's great. They can do that, but if kids have to take the bus home and they live out of where they can't walk to, they can't cycle to school, they don't get to do sports or activities or clubs. And as a result of that, they don't get the kind of extracurricular enrichment that they need as young students and young humans, as well as not being able to put that on their college resumes. So if we are really dedicated to them being career and college and life ready, we truly need to get creative about the way that we get kids to and fro, because it used to be you jumped on the school bus, you went to school, and you jumped on the bus and came home, and that's not necessarily the case anymore. And so I propose that we start talking to CET and find, like, where can we figure out, like, clubs and sports let out at X time in the evening, and where do these kids need to go, and how can we get them home, and really let them know that we see them, and that that time that they have after school is so critical for their development. And so how do we write that scale? So as one specific thing, and I could go on, but thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Okay, this is question number 4, and I'm going to start with Jen. How do you view the board's role versus the administration's role in running the school district, leveraging assets, and addressing challenges?
Well, this is easy because I'm on board with the Carver model. And so to that end, the board's role is setting vision, supervising the superintendent, and connecting to the community. Full stop. So I guess addressing challenges is probably the part of that question where we have a role that's maybe a little bit less defined by Carver model. And I think, I think that's where the sort of inbound and outbound work of this board is important. And I think that, you know, Carver talks about community connection. I don't think he just means being a punching bag. I think it also means, you know, being an advocate and being a representative of the district and being an outbound, ambassador. And I really strongly believe that that kind of two-way communication street is the best way for this board, to sort of to play a role there in that kind of addressing challenges. And then the only other way, honestly, is being prepared for these meetings. Is just doing the work that is prescribed by the role here, and being prepared to make decisions when the superintendent needs those decisions made, and being part of a productive team here on behalf of students and teachers and family.
Thank you, Jen. And then I'll move on to Ross.
All righty. Well, I agree again with the Carver model. The board's role is to decide what, not how. That's the superintendent's job. And so they take the direction from the board and figure out the best way to achieve those goals and ends. And I think that works really well. I think at some point it mentioned the board needs to get out of the way and let the superintendent and the staff get the work done within those limits to the means. I agree also that a big part of the board's work is to connect with the community, to be that advocate, to listen to the community, and to bring those ideas and those thoughts from the community back to the rest of the board and the superintendent, and act as that conduit between the community and the district. So it's a real partnership, and if it works that way, I think it works really well.
Thank you. And Brandy.
Yeah, I was really glad to read the article on the Carver model. I appreciated that. It was part of my education. I agree with my two fellow candidates that it seems to be working well in the district, and I appreciate the approach of the trust that it really fosters within the board, between the board, the admin, the super and the admin. We got to trust people to do their jobs. And if we don't trust people to be professionals, to be able to do their jobs, then that's a different conversation to have. And I think a lot of it runs on that knowing and being very clear and concise, because clear is kind, about what the board's role is, and then treating the superintendent as a CEO and giving them all of the resources that they need to get the job done. And as far the focus groups, it lends me to ask the question, like, what focus groups do we have in place to be able to go out into the community? Because I think that's such an important role that the board can play, to be able to go beyond the school board and go beyond the school board meetings and go out into the community and go into some of the places that you might not think about, and to leave people in the experience of being heard on both sides, for the board to have the superintendent, it's not just be heard, but have the true experience of being heard, which is at a feelings level, which comes down to trust. And so where can we get out into the community so that people see us as human beings, and that we're on the same side, and that we're setting parameters for what should not be happening? And at that point, everybody go forth and do your jobs as professionals. And in my experience, when I've been given that latitude, that's when people really, really flourish.
Thank you, Brandy.
Yeah, thank you.
Moving right along. Question number 5. As an individual school board member, how would you handle a situation where the board takes a position with which you do not agree? I think we'll start with Jen.
Disagree and commit.
Thanks. Brandy?
Yes, that. And also this is where collaborative discussion comes in. You know, we need to model for our public what that looks like in an open forum, in a respectful way. And yes, when the board makes a decision, I 100% stand behind that decision. But up until then, I am going to have absolutely no problem with pushing back. And I think that that's really important. I think that I am not conflict averse. So that's from my closing statement. And that doesn't mean that I'm seeking conflict, but it does mean that I am going to try to come in here and represent as many different diverse points of view that I can possibly fathom that could come our way, and throw them into the hopper and ask each person to respond to that. And so if I don't agree with the board's position, I am going to be the burr in your bonnet, if you will, up until the moment. And then if I disagree, then my job is to respectfully support 100% from that moment forward. And not just out of, like I have to, but from a place of together we're stronger. And there's no side chats. There's no any of that. It's all done up front. It's kind of like you weigh your options beforehand, but then once the decision is made, done. Thank you.
Thank you. Ross?
Well, I certainly agree with the other two candidates. I think it's important that we have that dialogue and those discussions when the issue is being discussed in the board meeting. We share our ideas and our thoughts, and if we disagree, we let that be known. But again, once the board votes and comes to a decision, then it's important that the entire board go along with that decision and follow it. And I've seen when it doesn't work that way, that boards become very dysfunctional. And as long as you are willing to say, okay, I said my piece and I gave my thoughts, and I'm now going to follow along with the board because that's what they voted on, then those things work pretty well. So I would agree with the other two candidates on that.
Thank you. Back to you.
All right. We're going to go to question 6, and Ross, I'm going to start with you. A controversial matter surfaces at a school, and you begin to get questions, and opinions from friends, fellow parents, or community members. How will you handle these interactions?
Well, I think it's important to listen. I think that's part of our job out in the community, is to listen to those diverse ideas and thoughts and concerns. But then I think it's important that we bring those back to the entire board. We discuss those with the board and the superintendent, make sure that he is aware of those. And then further discussion can occur in the board meeting to come to some kind of a resolution to those things. But I think out in the community, when you're listening to these comments from diverse groups and people in your area, it's important to listen, take notes, and then bring those ideas back to share with the rest of the board.
Thank you, Ross. Appreciate that very much. Jen?
I feel like there might be a flow chart for the answer to this one somewhere in one of these documents. And I am also pretty sure that what we do is hand it all to Marcus, right?
No.
No, okay, it's worth a try. So yeah, similarly, obviously, part of this job is listening. Part of the job is informing members of the community who might be misinformed about how, sort of something has, assuming this is all like a situation that's public knowledge and there's a correct answer and we can talk about it, like this is part of our job, is kind of to know, what happened and be able to talk about it with confidence. And encouraging the community connections to the board that do exist. We've got some ways for the public to make their controversial matter opinions known to us in this forum at a board meeting, but this is a forum that's pretty intimidating for a lot of family members and certainly inconvenient for folks with a job where, you know, this timing doesn't make sense. And so I do think, you know, having an organized way to sort of ingest and process and triage that community feedback is an important part of this work. And I know you have got a great system for it, and I look forward to participating in it fully.
Thank you, Jen. I appreciate it. Thank you for your answer. Brandy?
I have been in this situation so many times. There's always controversial matters at a school where you start to get peppered from all the directions. And I've found that not only is it important to listen, but I need to ask clarifying questions. I want to know the specific details of what is causing a family member or a fellow staff member, whoever the stakeholder is. I want to understand the details of that. And most importantly, I want to understand their story and give people a chance to share their story in the context of, like, what is this hitting on? What tender spot is this touching, so that I can get past, and we can get past maybe what might be the first, like, blow by or glance off run at whatever the concern is that they're bringing, and get down to the heart of the matter. And so in a position like this, I would carry a magic notebook. And when I have a conversation with somebody, because the way that my mind works these days is that sometimes stuff goes in and it doesn't always shuttle back to the short-term memory. Maybe some of you are familiar. And so I would keep a little magic notebook and write down and get people's permission to write down the specifics, the story, who in their lives it's affecting, so that I can really understand the gravity of it. And then bring that to the board. And I think, you know, as Jen said, it's not going to be feasible for folks to come in here when they're, you know, making breakfast for dinner, you know, whatever it happens to be for the evening for the kids. And they need to know that somebody's carrying around a magic notebook that has their stories in it.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Director Tatum?
All right. As a board member, you will serve a diverse group of constituents. Share with us an experience you have had working with people who have backgrounds, identities, or beliefs that differ than your own. How did you approach this, and what did you learn? Jen?
Okay, I like this question because, you know, when you live, I've lived in 9 different cities. When you live in a lot of places and you meet a lot of people, with a lot of different backgrounds and identities, but it's beliefs that's kind of the kicker here, isn't it? That's where things get challenging. And I mentioned in a shorthand way that I have done quite a bit of advocacy for gun violence prevention in Oregon. And that is one where people have a lot of beliefs, they have a lot of diverse beliefs about the role that firearms play in our society. A lot of diverse beliefs about the intersection of firearms and schools, a lot. And bringing those folks together in order to develop a coherent legislative strategy, and one that actually moves the needle in a meaningful way for Oregon safety, has been one of the great privileges of the last 10 years of my life. It hasn't been easy the entire time, but doing something like giving school boards the right in Oregon to prohibit firearms in their buildings was not a given. That was not always, you know, going to happen. It took a lot of work, and it took bringing folks together with very different beliefs about the role of firearms in our society in order to make something like that happen. And the way that you do that is by staying focused on common sets of values and end goals.
Thank you. Brandy?
Thanks for this question, and I'm going to tell you a story. So, share with us an experience you had working with people who have different backgrounds, identities, beliefs different than your own. How did you approach this? What did you learn? So, In 2012, I took a sabbatical from Redmond School District and opened a cupcake truck. And wild, right? And word on the street was that there was a board member, Redmond School District, that was really upset about a book that a teacher was using in their classroom. Howard Zinn's A People History of the United States. And I was like, that's me. So I went to the board and said, okay, it was me. And I showed up in front of the board and stated my case about why I was using it. I was using it as a piece of the historiography that I teach, which is not history in an IB classroom. It's how do different accounts of history actually shape the history that we understand. And that I was actually using it as point and counterpoint, also using another book that had a foreword by Rush Limbaugh. And we would look at a chapter from the Patriots' history of the United States and a chapter from the People's history of the United States. And I explained this at the board meeting. And then I asked the board member to go have lunch with me. And I found that sitting down and breaking bread and having dinner with somebody is one of the most important things that you can do in order to make connections. And back in the day when High Tides was downtown, and I'll never forget it, over a piece of key lime cheesecake, which, dang it, it's not there anymore. I remember this board member looking at me and saying, I would be really proud if you were my daughter at the end of it. And I was like, yes, because he got me, because I had a chance to share my story and a piece of cheesecake with him.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And Ross?
Well, probably the most intense group that I've worked with in the last several years was our leadership team at the college. And it was a very large group, 9, 10 people, and very different from all across the campus. And their group, or their job, was to meet every week and to address the key issues at the college and trying to come up with solutions. Very different people with different ideas, different beliefs. And we got through this and came to consensus on virtually every decision after working through a lot of issues between different members. What I found worked really well was going through a dialogue process, and where everybody gets their voice, everybody has a chance to share their ideas and their thoughts without being judgmental, which is not easy. Means everybody else in the group has to listen, actively listen, and then kind of show that they are actively listening by sharing some of those ideas back to make sure they've understood them correctly. And I think it is important to get the group out and in an informal setting, go out and have a beer, have a meal where we can get to know each other more personally. It took a lot of time, but those I think processes really help to provide and make for better decisions at the college. So consensus was the key, and we were able to do that for the most part.
We're going to start with you, Ross. This is the last question for the night. There are often special sessions, committee meetings, retreats, conferences, school events, and other commitments as a board member. Do you have any concerns with the time requirements of serving on this board?
Well, no, I do not right now. Being retired, I've got more time than I've had the last 40 some odd years. So I feel like I have the ability to give quite a bit of time to prepare for meetings and go to events and be part of the board and the community. So I would be looking forward to that.
Thank you. Jen?
Yes, I don't have any concerns, partially because Marcus promised that it was 10 hours a week, and I believe him, and partially because I know, gosh, they always sort of say if you want something done, you give it to a busy mom. I mean, I just am like, I am all schedule and compartmentalization, and I can do this. And yeah, I feel confident I can do this, otherwise I wouldn't be here.
Brandy?
Yeah, I agree. I'm lucky enough, I consider myself semi-retired. One of the hardest decisions I ever made in my life was stepping away as a public educator to try my hand at another iteration or another dream that I had, which is to be a small business owner. And found out that I wasn't crazy about that and stepped away from that. But I still like the work. I still like the work of teaching. So now I get to just sub for my friends at Caldera. Don't tell anybody else. And to teach yoga part-time at Ben Parks and Rec. And to be able to do a job like this. And I think that that's something that I want to emulate for people to see, that you can make adjustments, that you can do a little bit of what you love over here and a little bit of what you love over here. And I think that that's something that I want to take out into the community. And yeah, I think I have the time for it, I wouldn't be here, right? And frankly, I'm used to long hours and lots of responsibilities. Not that I'm crazy about the fact that my fellow former colleagues are having to deal with that on the day-to-day, but if I can take a little off their plate by the service that I would have and what I can do on this board, then I'm more than happy to do it. So yeah, I'm here, and as my husband and I like to say, I'm your huckleberry. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, directors, and thank you, Candace, for answering the questions. Now we're going to be moving into our closing statements, and then after that, we'll be doing our ballot sheets. I'm going to start a closing statement. Ross.
Hey, well, again, thank you all for the opportunity to be considered for a spot on your board. I did have a question I'd like to ask, then I'll make my last statement. But because I've been on a lot of boards and I've not seen this work very well on these other boards, I'm curious. The Carver governance model mentions that the board's primary relationship, again, is with the general public. And I'd be interested to understand some of the ways that you all ensure that the voices of all the community members are heard, especially from the underserved groups, if you have any strategies that you use on a regular basis.
How does this work with regard to his time for closing? Should we-
He'll finish his statement, and then
Okay.
you can answer the question.
Okay.
Go ahead, Ross. You can finish your statement. You have like 2 minutes left, and then we'll answer your question. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Right.
So just to wrap up, then I do believe I have the background and experience to be an effective board member for the district. Your governance model, your board ends, and your operational agreement are all well thought out and match well with my organizational background. I have devoted most of my career to educational excellence, and my passion for it remains very strong. I firmly believe that education is the key to the success of our country, and agree very much with the quote from Nelson Mandela that education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. Our schools are preparing the next generation to make this an even better world, and I cannot think of any work more important than that. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Ross. And Cameron, you can answer the question for him, or is Shirley going to answer the question?
Yes, I'd just like to say, Ross, that most of us are involved in other organizations, and it doesn't take very long when you meet with a group of people for them to find out who you are, especially since we're on TV every month, right? So we do honor that, and that is a source for me personally. Two of my other organizations that I'm active in is a great source for information and questions from me, and it gives me also the opportunity, one of you mentioned, with confidence to answer their questions.
Additionally, Ross, I would like to add to that is that it's just about what many teachers and educators and people in general do, is building relationships with different organizations within the community, showing up to those different things, showing up, being a part of what they do, and just listening, just being a voice so they can actually be able to get their points across. Because sometimes, like Jen mentioned, it's hard and it's daunting sometimes to come in this forum and speak to people. But if you're at those different events and stuff, you can get some of those people. And also just having an opportunity to be invited to those things are awesome as well. So just want to let you know. All right, thank you. All right,
Thank you.
all right. And our next closing statement will come from Jen.
Chair LeGrand and directors and Dr. Cook and Dr. Burke, thank you so much. It's been helpful to learn more about what you're looking for in a new member of the team. And I hope you feel like you know a little bit more about me and the skills that I could bring to that team if selected. I know this organization requires careful stewardship for its preservation and success, and I appreciate that you're taking this opportunity to evaluate the diverse experience and perspectives each of the three of us would bring to the work. And I want to leave you with my thoughts on a couple of things before my time's up. The first being improvement in academic performance, and then the second being improvement in the district's relationship with the community at large. I spent a good deal of time over the last few weeks digging into the board ends, and it hasn't been easy. There's more than 100 individual metrics to follow, most of which are really well measured, but many of which are missing quantitative goals on our part. It isn't clear to me that we've set numeric goals for the improvement in things like ELA and math proficiency, and I think we should. The board's adherence to the Carver governance model can improve by setting board ends with more specificity. And to that end, I'd like to see the board push for a difficult but achievable numeric improvement goal on those academic proficiency ends. And I want to learn more about how we take accountability for those outcomes. I think the district's relationship with the community at large is also a place where we have room for improvement, where I feel like I can help. The Carver model calls for the school board to take ownership of the performance of the system as a whole. It's absolutely possible that we're firing on all cylinders and the voters' rejection of the learning levy earlier this year was due to factors entirely beyond our control. But I know that levy was on the ballot this year because we need the money. Oregon's school funding system puts districts with aging facilities like ours at a disadvantage. And because at least 85% of Bend voters don't have a child currently in our system, we are not going to be able to achieve our academic and system goals without earning the trust of a lot broader swath of the community than the families we serve. And to me, the fastest way to earn that trust is to visibly improve performance academically, financially, reputationally. I've shared with many of you that I've spent years in Oregon as a gun control advocate, and you'll be shocked to hear that many people on the internet do not care for gun control moms at all. My point being, I'm experienced as an advocate on the side of an issue that's morally right, but politically unpopular, and I feel that's exactly where American public schools find themselves right now. Local option bonds and levies failed all over the state this fall. This isn't just a Bend problem, but it is a problem, and I feel this board's outward-facing work as described in the Carver model is critical to solving it. Meaningful and consistent engagement with all of Bend's communities in schools and beyond will help the district continuously interrogate our community's values and build a foundation of support that we need to keep both enrollment and financial capacity strong. And I thank all of you very much for the opportunity to participate in the forum tonight, and also want to thank all of you for serving your community in this incredibly important and meaningful way.
Thank you very much, Jen. Thank you. Brandy?
Thank you all. Thank you all for the opportunity to share my vision of how I can contribute while serving on this board. I'm inspired by the commitments that's in the room tonight. Every candidate here is dedicated, willing to put work, and genuinely invested in our community's future. It was great to visit with you up front. Yeah. So no matter who you select to balance this board, I believe the public's going to win. If appointed, I will actively listen, engage in thoughtful dialogue, and enter into meaningful community debate. I'm ready to ask tough questions about our district's priorities, like how we're supporting teacher wellness, addressing student and staff absenteeism, and considering the broader well-being of our families. Schools are constantly being asked to do more with less, and while we may not be able to change that entirely, we can think creatively about how to adapt. Who are we partnering with in the community, and how are we leveraging local and national resources so we're not overextending school budgets? What collaborative relationships is the board committed to building? And is there a vision that embraces student, school, and district wellness, or one that integrates critical thinking, emotional intelligence, and psychological resilience? What qualities will I bring to the board? Well, I'm direct, I'm energetic, infinitely curious, and folks often describe me as passionate, although sometimes used pejoratively. I am not conflict averse, nor am I afraid to stand up for or stand up to anyone when necessary. I know how to keep a calm head, step back and observe what needs to happen when stuff gets spicy, as it inevitably will. I'm a big picture thinker who still understands how different parts of a system interact. And I'm also a divergent thinker with a knack for generating unconventional, seemingly unrelated ideas and finding connections, and envisioning alternatives that lead to creative, boundary-pushing solutions. I know how to pivot and embrace the thrill of possibility that comes with change, while at the same time recognizing and tending to the anxieties that can produce for others. I'm resilient as a river rat, confident in my relational intelligence, and have no problem saying I don't know something and asking for help. My sense of humor, which has been a lifeline through many a tough situation, has helped me reframe challenges and approach difficult situations with a lighthearted, balanced perspective, which helps reduce tensions and opens doors to solutions. I like to have fun and share it, and people tell me they feel at ease around me. As for my limitations, well, you heard some of them, but now you'll hear that I'm a workaholic that needs to work hard to set boundaries with my time. And impatience can get the better of me, especially when I see low standards affecting others. And frankly, and I'll end here, I'm ticked about our state's troubling test scores in the epidemic of gun violence and suicide. But lucky for me, I'm practiced in transmuting that anger into action. Thank you all for the time that you spent here tonight and all of your service.
All right, thank you all. I appreciate it very much.
Yeah.
This is a very difficult decision, but all three of you are well-qualified candidates to be a part of this. One thing I would do would let you know, regardless of whoever fills this vacancy tonight, we do have one of our board members who will not be running again, so just want to keep that in consideration as well in the upcoming election in May. So just want to give you guys a heads up for that as well. So just to remind you of that also. At this time, Janet's going to give us ballots, and we're going to, oh, really quick, before I go any further, are there any questions? I know Ross had a question. Do you two have any questions that you wanted to ask? Okay. Brandy? All right, thank you very much. Appreciate you. Okay, ready? Directors, are we ready? Are we ready? Gonna make a motion? Yes, ma'am. All right. At this time, I will entertain a motion.
I move to nominate Ross Tomlin to fill the vacant board, Zone 6 board member seat.
I second.
I turned it off instead of turning it back on. Thank you. I've had a motion by Director Tatum and a second by Director Fisher. There any discussion?
Engaging, is this for, there will be time for comment regarding this or discussion as comment this time? Or shall I save it?
This is your time to
Okay,
comment on
thank
this
you.
process.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm using the terms. I just want to say I am so impressed with the three of you and your statements and your answers. And I'm really grateful that three amazing folks and the others who have, who applied, really want to serve this community, our Ben Lapine schools. And a few highlights for me was just the focus on emotional well-being and critical thinking skills. And I'm in higher ed, and I just value so much students who have those skills when they graduate Ben Lapine schools. And the number of boards and service commitments you all have, and gun safety, it's really timely to hear about that, and I very much appreciate that commitment to service, public service, and to our kids. And then also, I'm exceptionally committed as a lifelong public educator and graduate of public schools, the commitment to higher ed, public, for community college, and the career tech that Ross, that you bring, because that's one of our priorities as a board, as our school district, as well as familiarity with Lapine, which is one of our most vulnerable students from Lapine. And so I very much appreciate all of your commitment to everything. So thank you.
Shirley?
I just want to say thank you so much. And the opportunity to add each of your brilliant skills and experiences in different ways would be a nice addition to our board. It was a very distinctly tough decision. And again, we do know that we will have board openings at the May election. So thank you so much for your commitment to our kids.
Director Tatum?
Yeah, just again, thank you so much for being here and for your commitment and your willingness to step up and serve. And I hope we hear from you again in the future.
And I want to say the same thing as well. But the main thing I want to talk about is that not just the wellness piece and the critical thinking piece, the gun safety piece, all those things are things that sometimes us as board members are under control, but we do have community members who could definitely continue to address those. And there's great opportunities to be able to continue to do that. So please keep your voice being heard, keep being that thorn, like you mentioned earlier, in people's sides when it comes to those things. I would definitely agree with you in some of the different pieces about the quantitative pieces of goals and targets. We definitely appreciate bringing that up as well, because that's something that we're near and dear into our hearts as well. We appreciate you for that. And also, this proficiency is as well, and we know that things shift in terms of how things may go or may not go. We know what kind of, what we're in right now in terms of possible dismantling of our educational system. But, anyway, that being said, but I don't think we have enough people in our communities that are not gonna let that happen. That's just me. But again, thank you for being here and appreciate your time. Thank you. It's time for a vote. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 All opposed? Your votes are unanimous. Thank you again for being here. Appreciate your time. Normally, at some of the end of these things, we do have board director comments, but we're going to save that to our next board meeting to be able to do this. And now, this special meeting that we have for this evening is going to be adjourned. Our next meeting is December 10th, 2024. And like I said, this meeting is adjourned.